From foster care and bleached hair to separatist, activist, and pilgrimage. He had shed his skin numerous times and had perfected the art of reinvention, always one step closer to the best version that was the real Malcolm X. Even after his death, he was reborn as a symbol for the unborn youth, as a reflection into the injustice he had faced as an Afro-American in the land of the free and the home of the brave. He was brave enough to fight for the freedom of his people that the government had only promised, never delivered.
By any means necessary.
If you listen to his speeches without a date stamp, like I initially did, you will surely see him as a paradox of ideas. But like a well-crafted movie, in the right order, he's truly the best example of reinvention, from where he once was and to how he is remembered today. After losing his father to hate crime and mother's abandonment due to mental illness, young Malcolm X still remained an avid student until circumstances led to his soon wavered transformation. In 1946, at the age of 21, he was arrested for robbery from his roots as a hustler in a zoot suit, the first wrong step into the right future. Little did he know these 7 years were instrumental that molded him into a spokesman and a leader. One can see a clear delineation after when he was schooled to when he was educated. That is to say, he only returned when he was recreated as one of the most articulate speakers of his era, speaking all over colleges and universities in his short life. He didn't serve time in prison as much as time served him.
But of even more interest to New Yorkers is Malcolm X, the Muslims' New York minister. He is a remarkable man, a man who, by his own admission, was once a procurer and dope peddler. He served time for robbery in the Michigan and Massachusetts state penitentiaries. But now he's a changed man. He will not smoke or drink. He will not even eat in a restaurant that houses a tavern. He told Newsbeat that his life changed for him when the Muslim faith taught him no longer to be ashamed of being a black man. Reporter Louis Lomax asked Minister Malcolm X to further explain the Muslim teachings of Elijah Muhammad.
Not only did he use the next 13 years until his tragic death to change his people's perspective, but unintentionally also his own.
If we tell you that Negroes are being hung on the tree or being shot down illegally, unjustly, and those Negroes should do something to protect themselves, you say you're advocating violence. The white man is tricking you. He's trapping you. He doesn't call it violence when he lands troops in South Vietnam. Please. He doesn't call it violence when he lands troops in Berlin. When the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, he didn't say get nonviolent. He said, praise the Lord, but pass the ammunition.
This power he was offering the men and women he wanted to liberate enough to fight back, for a cause he knew was far rooted into their history than they had been told of. Like subscribing on YouTube and following on Twitter is a portal into the mind of a person today. In the 1960s, word of mouth and acumen style of speech infused men and women to be one with the cause, and Malcolm X, with no further education in the 8th grade, took up the job of becoming self-educated in educating others. Even after his perspective had shifted with the introduction of Islam as his religion, twice, once by the mangled form presented by the Nation of Islam, and then again after being enlightened at his pilgrimage to Mecca, which gathered Muslims with no distinction from head to toe, and he began to sense the injustice in his own ideology of separating the persecuted Afro-Americans from the racists. This had been a clash of minds and was the last straw among many unacceptable hypocrisies from Elijah Muhammad that led Malcolm X to separate from the Nation of Islam. After years of recorded speeches from 1960 to 1965, his reinvention can be best described in waves that can be pinpointed from his usage of key words. In 1960, one of his first speeches had black mentioned 28 times and white mentioned 34 times. His speech, The Ballot or the Bullet, was about black nationalism during the current election year. At the time, Afro-Americans did not have much say in who they wanted to elect. The white politicians would come into the black neighborhoods and push press and force it upon them to put them in office as an ill-informed vote. What Malcolm X was trying to instill into their minds through the speech was to be their own voice. He wanted them to vote for who they felt was right, to benefit them for change.
It's going to be the ballot or the bullet.
The white man was used 42 times and the black man 52.
One white man named Lincoln supposedly fought the Civil War to solve the race problem, and the problem is still here. Another white man named Lincoln, again the same white man, issued the Emancipation Proclamation to solve the race problem, and the problem is still here. Some more white liberals came along with the 13th, 14th, and 5th Amendments, which were supposed to solve the race problem, and the problem is still here.
African Americans were the largest racial minority, amounting to an estimated 10.5% of the population in 1960. They couldn't afford to leave their fate to the words of white politicians. The Ballot or the Bullet is discussing liberty or death, to either be free or to die to try. Liberty or death was a phrase that was used by a young patriot by the name of Patrick Henry during the Revolutionary War. He compared it as it had been the Americans' right to fight off the British, as it was there. He didn't just bear witness to racism, he talked about it, talked about humanity, about human failings, and how to rise through and beyond them to liberate the African Americans without the help of white politicians that didn't understand their problems, that didn't understand their struggles, and that didn't want to provide a solution.
When you're in your own nation, in your own land, you're in a position to get justice. But when you're in another man's country, in another man's land, under another man's flag, and under another man's government, and under another man's court system, you have to look to that other man for justice, and you'll never get it. And Negroes in this country probably are authorities on that.
Now, I am well aware of what I'm setting in motion by what I'm saying up here tonight. I'm well aware. But I have never said or done anything in my life that I wasn't prepared to suffer the consequences for.